Well, it looks like Angel Reese. Well, it looks like she's just been caught in what could certainly be taken as in a lie. All right? All these things that she says she has dealt with over the last year, all these encounters of racism.
Picture this. Angel Reese sits down for what should be a routine media session after another blowout loss.
It is embarrassing. It's absolutely embarrassing. It is absolutely embarrassing. And the fact is that originally it's, oh yeah, you know, we're looking towards everything. Then they had to double down. They actually redacted this statement. They redacted a statement. They redacted the statement saying we're looking at everything, saying, no, we're actually not looking at most of the stuff. We're looking at a lie spread on social media that went viral. We are looking into a literal lie spread on social media that got spoken into fact. We're looking at a lie.
Yeah, I think we agree. I think we're, in compliance with them, with the league, and obviously there's no room or space in our game for hate. So we're complying with everything that's going on.
Coach, when did you become aware that there was hate speech that happened?
I think when everyone else did. I think that it's something that we heard about, and so again, we're just forthcoming with anything that the league is able to do investigation-wise.
I didn't think these things would be a topic this year. It's certainly not at this point, but here we go again.
Because now Indiana Fever players, all right, are getting called into question. Indiana Fever fans are getting called into question today. We got one post on here where somebody's literally calling... They're talking about there should be a boycott. That's what it really is, of the All-Star game over player safety.
What if one of the biggest, most divisive stories of the entire WNBA season was built on a foundation of sand? And what if the very person at the center of that firestorm accidentally confessed to the truth in a moment she thought no one was really listening? In sports, we're used to narratives. The hero, the villain, the underdog. But rarely do we get to see a carefully constructed narrative completely crumble in real time. Exposed not by a team of investigative journalists, but by the subject herself. This is the story of how a single sentence from Angel Reese contradicted weeks of outrage, vindicated an entire fan base, and raised serious questions about the line between victimhood and social media performance. The story begins where so many modern controversies do, online. Following a heated game between the Chicago Sky and the Indiana Fever, a few posts began to circulate on social media. They weren't from verified journalists or official sources, but from accounts claiming to have witnessed ugly behavior at the game. The allegations were serious that Indiana Fever fans had directed racist remarks and noises towards the Chicago Sky players. In the supercharged atmosphere surrounding the league, particularly the rivalry between Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese, these claims acted like a lit match on dry tinder. The story exploded. Before long, what started as a handful of unverified text posts had morphed into a major media event. Sports news outlets, sensing a story that tapped into larger cultural conversations, began reporting on the alleged racist incidents. The narrative was set. The Indiana Fever fan base, energized by the arrival of Caitlin Clark, was becoming a hostile environment. Angel Reese and her teammates were portrayed as victims, forced to endure hateful rhetoric while simply trying to do their jobs. The pressure mounted on the league to act, to protect its players, and to make a statement. And the WNBA did act. Understanding the gravity of the accusations, the league launched a full-scale official investigation. This wasn't a cursory glance or a simple press release. They treated the matter with the utmost seriousness it deserved. This move, in itself, seemed to lend credence to the social media claims. After all, a professional sports league wouldn't dedicate significant time and resources unless there was something substantial to investigate. The world watched, waiting for the league to confirm what many already believed to be true. The investigation was remarkably thorough. The league didn't just rely on hearsay. Investigators interviewed fans who were seated in the specific sections where the incidents were alleged to have occurred. They spoke with arena personnel and security staff who were on duty that night. They questioned team staff from both the Indiana Fever and the Chicago Sky. Most importantly, they meticulously reviewed hours of security footage from every conceivable angle and combed through audio recordings from broadcast equipment, searching for any shred of evidence to support the claims. Every stone was being turned. After weeks of speculation and investigation, the WNBA finally released its findings. The conclusion was delivered in the carefully chosen, sterile language of a corporate statement, but its meaning was explosive. The league announced that the reports of racist comments were not substantiated. In plain English, after all that digging, after all those interviews and hours of footage, they found absolutely nothing. Zero evidence. Not a single person could provide any proof that the alleged incidents actually happened. The first major crack in the narrative had appeared, and it was a canyon. For the Indiana Fever fans who had been branded as racist by a viral social media campaign, it was a moment of vindication. But the story was far from over. One of the most telling pieces of the puzzle came not from a fan or a league official, but from the Chicago Sky's own head coach, Tyler Marsh. When asked by a reporter when he first became aware of the alleged hate speech, his answer was stunning. He said he found out the same way everyone else did, on social media after the game. Think about that for a second. The coach, the person who was on the court, in the huddle, and in the locker room, had no idea his players were supposedly being targeted. Not a single player on either team reported hearing anything to the officials. No referees noted any unusual disruptions from the crowd. The entire controversy, it seemed, was born and raised on Twitter, invisible to the very people who were supposedly at the center of it. As the official investigation found no evidence, the Chicago Sky's PR team appeared to go into full damage control mode, but not in the way you might expect. Instead of addressing the lack of evidence, they began building a protective fortress around Angel Reese. Her media availability was suddenly limited. Press conferences were cut short. One-on-one interviews, once common, became exceedingly rare. When she did speak, team representatives hovered nearby, seemingly ready to intervene if the questions strayed into uncomfortable territory. This heavy-handed approach was noticed by veteran sports journalists who found it highly unusual. It begged the question, if you're the victim of a clear injustice, why do you need so much protection from talking about it? The tighter they controlled the access, the more people wondered what they were trying to hide. This wasn't the first time an explosive claim involving Reese had faced scrutiny. People were reminded of a prior incident where Reese claimed a white Caitlin Clark fan had blocked her and her teammates from entering their hotel, allegedly calling her a ghetto B***, TCH, like the Fever incident. That story also spread widely, but corroborating evidence was hard to come by. Critics began to draw parallels, suggesting a potential pattern of creating narratives that positioned her as a victim of targeted harassment, which would then be amplified by online supporters and media outlets eager for drama. The term race hoax began to circulate in more critical corners of the internet, comparing her to figures like Jussie Smollett and Bubba Wallace, whose own claims of racist incidents later fell apart under investigation. Then came the moment it all unraveled. It happened during what should have been a completely routine post-game media session after a loss to the New York Liberty. The cameras were rolling, but the atmosphere was relaxed. A reporter asked Reese a fairly standard question about handling the online scrutiny she receives. Leaning back in her chair, looking comfortable and unguarded, Reese began to answer, and then she let something slip. Something so contradictory, so utterly at odds with the narrative of the past several weeks, that it felt like an accidental confession. In response to the question about online criticism, Angel Reese delivered the line that would detonate the entire story. She said, and this is a direct quote, "I get so much love in person. I haven't ever had a negative encounter in person ever. And I've been going through this for 3 years. Never had an encounter in person that was negative." She repeated it for emphasis. Not one. Ever. She dismissed the online world as just people hiding behind a keyboard and said she doesn't worry about it. In that moment, the reporters in the room began looking at each other, realizing the significance of what they had just heard. The PR fortress had been breached, not from the outside, but from within. Let's put these two realities side by side. For weeks, the public narrative pushed by social media and amplified by major news outlets was that Angel Reese and her team were the victims of vile, racist, in-person harassment from Indiana Fever fans. The situation was presented as so severe that it warranted a full-scale WNBA investigation. Yet here was Angel Reese herself on camera, stating unequivocally that in her entire career, she has never, not once, had a single negative encounter with anyone in person. The two statements cannot coexist. One of them has to be false. And given that the WNBA's exhaustive investigation already concluded there was no evidence of the racist encounter, Reese's admission became the smoking gun. It didn't take long for the clip to hit social media. Basketball Twitter erupted. People who had been skeptical all along felt completely validated. They dissected her every word, comparing it to the previous narrative. The phrase "I've never had a negative encounter in person" ever became a meme. It was the ultimate gotcha moment, where weeks of carefully managed PR and narrative building were undone by a few seconds of candid honesty. The dots were now fully connected for everyone to see. The unverified social media posts, the coach who heard nothing, the WNBA investigation that found nothing, and now the admission from Reese herself that nothing negative ever happens to her in person. The fallout was swift and embarrassing, especially for the media outlets that had run with the initial story without skepticism. Personalities on major networks like ESPN, who had previously discussed the racist fan allegations as established. In fact, were now in the awkward position of having to report on Reese's contradictory statement. They had to acknowledge that the league found no evidence to support the claims they had so eagerly amplified. It was a brutal hit to their credibility. A case study in how the rush to embrace a compelling narrative can lead to a massive journalistic failure. Calls for apologies began to pour in, directed not just at Reese, but at the media for damaging the reputation of an entire fan base. Throughout this entire saga, Caitlin Clark and the Indiana Fever organization handled the situation with remarkable class. They didn't engage in social media mudslinging. They didn't issue angry denials. They simply cooperated with the league's investigation and let the process play out, confident that the truth would emerge, and it did. The WNBA's findings, combined with Reese's own words, served as a complete vindication. The fans who had packed the arena to support their team only to be labeled as racists on a national stage were proven to have done nothing wrong. They had been unfairly targeted in a controversy that, by all accounts, was manufactured online. So, the biggest question remains, why? Why create or perpetuate a narrative that wasn't true? Perhaps it was an attempt to control her public image, to solidify the villain persona she has sometimes embraced, a character who thrives on being targeted. As she herself has said, hating pays too. Perhaps it was a miscalculation, a social media rumor that her team decided to lean into, only for it to spiral out of their control. Or perhaps it reveals something deeper about our current media landscape, where unverified claims can become accepted fact overnight, as long as they fit a preferred storyline about society and sports. Whatever the reason, the strategy backfired spectacularly. This entire affair has fundamentally changed the rivalry between Angel Reese and Caitlin Clark. It's no longer just about two talented players competing on the court. It's now layered with the memory of this collapsed narrative. Every future matchup between the Fever and the Sky will be charged with this history. One side was falsely accused and handled it with grace. The other was caught in a massive contradiction of their own making. Angel Reese's credibility took a significant hit, while Caitlin Clark and the Fever fans emerged with their reputations intact and strengthened. The truth came out, not from a leak or an expose, but from an unguarded moment on a live camera. And in the world of celebrity and sports, that's the kind of story you can never erase. What do you think this incident says about the power of social media in sports today? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. And if you enjoyed this story, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into the stories shaping the sports world. Thanks for watching.